Hello, and welcome back to Dream Room. If your patio, balcony, or small backyard feels plain, you do not need a major renovation to make it beautiful. In many cases, one piece of weathered wood, 3 terracotta pots, a handful of natural stones, and one comfortable chair can completely change how the space feels. That is the idea behind today's video. We are creating a rustic Mediterranean garden using materials that already look better with age. Driftwood, reclaimed timber, thick jute rope, pebbles, rough stone, terracotta, herbs, and simple greenery. And this is especially for you if your outdoor space is small. Maybe you have a narrow backyard beside the house, a 6 by 8 foot patio, a rented deck where you cannot drill into every wall, or a balcony where every square foot matters. Perhaps you love decorating, but you do not want heavy construction anymore. You would rather use a screwdriver, scissors, rope, and a few simple hand tools than spend an entire weekend cutting lumber and moving concrete. You may also want plants where they are easier to reach, fewer things to bend down for, and a seating area where you can actually enjoy the garden instead of constantly maintaining it. That is exactly what we are going to build around. I have selected 8 Mediterranean-inspired ideas that give you the biggest visual change without filling a small space with clutter. We will turn bare walls into vertical gardens. We will use branches as decoration instead of throwing them away. We will create focal points from stone and sculptural plants. And later I will show you how one ordinary seating corner can feel completely different after sunset with just a few warm lights. Here is one design rule to remember before we begin. In a small garden, do not decorate everything. Choose one wall, one corner, one place to sit. Then make that area unforgettable. And our first transformation is one of the simplest, a reclaimed wooden shelf supported by a naturally curved branch. A tiny project that can turn an empty wall into the beginning of an entire Mediterranean courtyard. If you enjoy practical decorating ideas for small homes, patios, balconies, bedrooms, workspaces, and gardens using affordable, natural materials, subscribe to Dream Room. Now, let's begin with that empty wall. 1. The Driftwood Floating Garden Shelf. Let's begin with one of the easiest ways to change a plain wall without changing the entire garden. A single reclaimed wooden shelf, paired with one naturally curved branch, can create the kind of rustic Mediterranean detail that looks as though it has been there for years. Start with a weathered board about 24 to 36 inches long. It does not need to be perfect. In fact, a few cracks, faded edges, and old saw marks make it more interesting. Then look for a strong branch with an unusual curve. This branch becomes part support, part sculpture. Instead of hiding the bracket, let the support become part of the design. Place the shelf against a warm white, cream, stone, or pale stucco wall. That contrast is important. Dark, aged wood immediately stands out against a light Mediterranean background. Now keep the display simple. Use 2 or 3 terracotta pots, not 10. Add rosemary, thyme, a trailing succulent, or a small lavender plant. Then place one lantern, an old ceramic jug, or a small stone bowl between them. That is enough. The mistake many people make in a small garden is filling every empty inch. But Mediterranean style often feels calm because it leaves room around each object. If your patio is only 6 by 8 feet, this shelf can give you greenery without taking away valuable floor space. And if bending down has become less comfortable, place the shelf around waist to chest height. Your herbs will be easier to water, trim, and check every morning. For renters, there is another option. Instead of fixing the shelf permanently to the wall, attach it to a narrow freestanding wooden frame that can sit behind a bench or planter box. You get the same layered look, but you can move it later. One more detail makes a big difference. Do not use brand new bright rope, polished wood, and glossy plastic pots together. They fight against the rustic look. Choose materials with similar visual age: faded timber, natural fiber rope, clay, rough stone, and matte finishes. When these textures sit together, even an inexpensive shelf begins to feel intentional. And once you understand how powerful vertical space can be, The next idea takes that principle much further. Instead of one shelf, we are going to create an entire hanging herb garden with reclaimed boards and thick rope. 2. The rope-suspended three-tier herb garden. Now let's take the same idea of using vertical space and make it even more useful. A three-tier herb garden made from reclaimed wooden boards and thick natural rope can turn an empty wall, pergola corner, or covered patio into a beautiful Mediterranean display. The structure is simple. Use 3 narrow wooden boards, spaced evenly from top to bottom, and suspend them with strong rope from a secure overhead beam or sturdy frame. The shelves should feel light and open, not bulky. Then bring in the plants. Rosemary works beautifully because of its upright shape and silvery green color. Thyme and oregano stay compact. Lavender adds fragrance and a softer Mediterranean look. Small succulents can fill the remaining spaces without making the shelves feel crowded. Keep the pots small. Terracotta is the obvious choice because its warm color works naturally with weathered wood and jute rope. A mix of 4-inch and 6-inch pots is usually enough to create variation without adding too much weight. The beauty of this idea is not only visual, it also makes good use of a small patio where floor space is limited. Instead of spreading 6 or 8 pots around your feet, you move them upward and keep the walking area clear. For older gardeners, that can make daily care more comfortable. Herbs positioned between waist and eye level are easier to inspect, trim, and water. You can see dry leaves sooner, reach the soil without kneeling, and harvest rosemary or thyme while standing. If you live in a rented home or apartment, you do not have to attach anything permanently to a wall. A freestanding wooden frame can support the same 3 hanging shelves and can be moved later if you change the layout or move to another home. There is one important rule. Do not hang this directly above a chair or across the main walkway. Place it beside the seating area, against a wall, or along the edge of the patio. Use lightweight pots and make sure the supporting beam or frame is strong enough for the total load. Visually, this project works because 4 simple textures come together: faded wood, rough rope, warm clay, and soft green herbs. Nothing looks overly polished. Nothing feels too new. And once those materials begin repeating throughout the garden, the whole space starts to feel connected. But the next idea changes the scale completely. Instead of using shelves to decorate the wall, we are going to turn the wall itself into the main focal point with a giant circular driftwood sculpture. Why? See, the giant circular driftwood wall sculpture. Now we are moving from something practical to something much more dramatic. If you have one large blank wall in your patio, courtyard, or garden, this idea can become the visual centerpiece of the entire space. The concept is simple. Create one oversized circular sculpture using weathered branches and driftwood. Do not worry about making the circle perfectly symmetrical. That would actually remove some of the charm. The beauty comes from irregular branches, different thicknesses, natural bends, and small gaps between the pieces. When these elements form a loose circle, the result feels handmade, organic, and much more interesting than a perfectly manufactured decoration. This works especially well against a warm white, cream, pale stone, or beige wall. The light background makes the darker wood stand out immediately. Now comes the most important part. Do not fill the entire circle. Add only a few carefully chosen details. You might use 1 or 2 small succulents, a tiny terracotta pot, a woven rope accent, or a small lantern. Then leave plenty of empty space. That empty space is what keeps the sculpture from becoming heavy or cluttered. In a small garden, one large focal point often works better than 20 small decorations spread across the wall. It gives the eye somewhere to rest. It also makes the space feel more intentional. Place a chair, small bench, or compact seating area beneath the sculpture, and suddenly the wall becomes more than a background. It becomes the identity of the courtyard. This is especially effective in a narrow patio where you do not have room for large furniture or many decorative pieces on the ground. The wall does the visual work for you. The circular shape also softens straight architectural lines. Most patios are full of rectangles: doors, windows, paving stones, tables, and walls. A large natural circle introduces contrast. and makes the whole setting feel more relaxed. And once you create that strong vertical focal point, the next step is to balance it at ground level. That is where natural stone, pale gravel, and one sculptural plant can completely transform an empty corner. 4. The stone ring agave garden. Now let's bring the design down from the wall and give the ground its own focal point. Choose one sculptural plant, such as an agave or another architectural plant suited to your climate, and make it the center of a simple stone composition. You do not need a large garden bed. Even one awkward corner beside a patio, fence, or garden wall can work. Start by creating an irregular ring with natural stones. Do not try to make every rock the same size or shape. A slightly uneven border feels more relaxed and fits the rustic Mediterranean style much better than a perfect circle. Inside the ring, use gravel or pale pebbles. Then place the agave in the center, or slightly off-center, depending on the shape of the space. The contrast does most of the work. You have rough stone around the edge, smooth gravel underneath, and one strong plant rising from the middle. That combination creates structure without making the garden feel crowded. If the space allows, add only a few smaller plants around the main agave. Keep them lower and simpler so they do not compete with the focal plant. This is especially useful if you have a corner that currently holds several random pots. Instead of spreading decorations everywhere, give that area one clear purpose. One plant, one stone border, one gravel surface. That is often enough. There is also a simple design trick that can make a small bed feel deeper. Place the larger stones closer to the focal plant, then gradually use smaller materials toward the outer edge. The change in scale is subtle, but it helps guide the eye through the composition instead of making everything look flat. For viewers who prefer a lower maintenance garden, this type of arrangement can also be easier to manage than a densely planted flower bed. There are fewer plants competing for attention, fewer areas to reach into, and the gravel keeps the composition visually clean. The key is restraint. Do not keep adding decorations just because there is still empty space. In Mediterranean-inspired design, the empty areas around stone and plants are part of the composition. And now that we have created one strong feature at ground level, the next idea will help us use another often wasted surface. We are going back to the wall, but this time, we will turn reclaimed wooden crates into a compact living garden. 5. The reclaimed crate living wall. Now let's turn an empty wall into something that is both decorative and useful. A group of reclaimed wooden crates can become a compact living wall for herbs, trailing plants, pottery, and small natural accents. The key is not to arrange the crates in a perfect grid. Instead, stagger them slightly. Place one higher, another lower, and leave a little breathing room between each box. That uneven rhythm gives the wall a more relaxed Mediterranean character and keeps the display from looking too formal. Each crate can become its own small garden. One might hold thyme, another can be filled with trailing ivy, a third could display lavender in a terracotta pot. You can leave one section almost empty and place only a small clay vessel or a piece of driftwood inside. That contrast is important. If every crate is packed with plants, the wall quickly becomes busy. If some sections are fuller and others are simpler, the entire composition feels more natural and collected over time. This idea is especially useful for a small patio or balcony because it moves greenery off the floor. Instead of having 6 or 8 individual pots taking up valuable walking space, you create one vertical feature that organizes everything in a much smaller footprint. For a rented home, there is an easy variation. Secure the crates to a freestanding wooden backing instead of fixing them permanently to the building. That gives you the same vertical garden effect, but the entire display can be moved later if you change the layout or relocate. Keep the planting simple. Use lightweight pots, small herbs, ferns, or trailing plants that fit comfortably inside each compartment. And remember the main rule from the earlier ideas. Do not try to decorate every inch. A little empty wood showing between plants helps the texture of the reclaimed material remain part of the design. This is what makes the wall feel rustic rather than overloaded. It also proves one of the most useful lessons for anyone decorating a small outdoor space. When you begin running out of room on the ground, look upward. A plain 6-foot wall may offer more useful decorating and growing space than the patio floor below it. And once the walls and planting areas are working together, we can finally create the part of the garden that matters most. A place to sit down and enjoy it. Next, we are building a simple Driftwood Mediterranean reading nook. Yucks, the Driftwood Mediterranean reading nook. Now that the walls and planting areas are beginning to feel complete, it is time to create a place where you can actually enjoy the garden. A Mediterranean-inspired reading nook does not need much space. One comfortable chair can be enough. Choose a rattan, woven, or weather-resistant chair and place it against a textured driftwood backdrop. Then add only a few supporting elements around it. A small tree stump side table gives you a place for a cup of coffee, a book, or a lantern. One terracotta pot of lavender adds color and fragrance. A trailing fern softens the harder lines of the chair and wood. A woven basket can hold a cushion, gardening gloves, or a light blanket. And that is already enough to make the corner feel intentional. Do not crowd the area with too many pots. The purpose of this nook is not to display everything you own. It is to create one calm place where you can sit down. That is especially important if you enjoy gardening but no longer want every part of the garden to feel like another maintenance task. A good outdoor space should give something back to you. It should offer a place for morning coffee, a place to read for 20 minutes in the afternoon, or simply somewhere to sit after watering the plants and enjoy what you have created. For a small patio, use the 3-height rule. Place one visual element close to the ground, such as the stump table or a low planter. Keep another feature around seated eye level, such as lavender, a lantern, or a trailing plant. Then add something taller behind the chair, such as the driftwood wall feature or a vertical arrangement of branches. These 3 layers create depth. Even a patio measuring only 6 by 8 feet can feel more complete because the eye has something to notice at several different heights. Comfort should remain the priority. Keep the chair easy to get in and out of. Leave enough open space around it so you are not stepping over pots or decorative branches. And position the side table close enough that you do not have to reach awkwardly for a drink or book. The final result should feel simple, quiet, and personal. Not a showroom. A place you genuinely want to use. And once we have created that comfortable destination, the next step is to make the journey toward it just as beautiful. Next, we will use natural stone, gravel, and driftwood to create a garden path that guides the eye through the space. 7. The natural stone and driftwood garden path. Now that we have created a comfortable place to sit, the next step is to make the path leading toward it feel just as intentional. A simple combination of natural stone, gravel, and driftwood can turn an ordinary walkway into part of the garden design. Start with irregular natural stepping stones or a stable stone path. They do not need to form a perfectly straight line. In fact, a gentle curve can make a small garden feel longer because your eye naturally follows the path instead of seeing the entire space at once. Around the stones, use gravel to create a clean Mediterranean base. Then soften the edges with a few carefully placed details. A piece of weathered driftwood can rest beside the path. Rosemary or low-growing herbs can sit near the border. 1 or 2 terracotta pots can add warmth. Small clusters of natural stone can help connect the walkway to the rest of the garden, but keep the center of the path clear. This is especially important if you want the garden to remain comfortable and easy to use every day. For older homeowners, the main walking surface should be stable, reasonably level, and wide enough to move through without having to avoid pots, branches, or loose objects. Rustic does not have to mean uneven. The decorative driftwood should stay beside the pathway rather than crossing the main walking area. The same goes for log slices. They may look beautiful as sculptural details near gravel or planting beds, but a secure stone surface is a better choice for the path itself. This gives you the Mediterranean character without creating unnecessary obstacles. The visual balance is simple. Stone provides structure. Gravel creates continuity. Driftwood adds age and texture. And herbs soften the hard materials with greenery. You do not need to use all of these elements every few feet. Repeat them gently throughout the walkway so the design feels connected rather than crowded. If the garden is narrow, let the path curve slightly toward the reading nook or another focal point. That small change in direction creates a sense of discovery. Instead of seeing everything immediately, you are invited to move through the garden. And once the path, seating area, walls, and planting spaces are working together, there is only one layer left to add: light. In the final idea, we will take this same Mediterranean garden and show how a few warm lanterns can completely change its atmosphere after sunset. 8. The evening driftwood and lantern garden. Now we come to the final transformation. The garden may already feel warm and inviting during the day, but after sunset, the right lighting can give the same small patio an entirely different personality. Start with a simple reclaimed timber console placed against the wall. Keep the surface relaxed and natural. Add a few terracotta pots with rosemary or lavender, one sculptural piece of driftwood, and perhaps a small ceramic vessel. Then introduce warm light. Use lightweight solar or battery lanterns around the console, beside plants, or safely suspended from a sturdy pergola structure. The goal is not to make the entire garden bright. That is where many small outdoor spaces lose their atmosphere. Instead, create several gentle pools of light. Place one near the seating area. Another can glow behind a plant. A third can sit beside the driftwood sculpture or reclaimed wood console. The darker areas between those points of light create depth. They also allow the natural textures to become more noticeable. Rough bark catches the light differently from terracotta. Rope creates soft shadows. Stone feels heavier and more grounded. Leaves become silhouettes against the wall. This is why evening lighting works so well with rustic Mediterranean materials. You are not adding a completely new design. You are simply revealing the textures that are already there. If you have used jute rope elsewhere in the garden, repeat it here around one or two decorative elements. That small repetition helps connect the evening setup to the shelves, hanging planters, and wall features we created earlier. Keep the arrangement simple. A few warm lights are usually more effective than covering every railing, wall, and planter with illumination. And for anyone working with a modest budget, this may be one of the easiest transformations in the entire garden. You do not need to rebuild the patio. You do not need new furniture. You do not even need more plants. You are using the same reclaimed wood, terracotta, herbs, stone, and driftwood that already define the space. The only difference is what happens when the sun goes down. During the day, the garden feels earthy and relaxed. At night, it becomes quieter, warmer, and more intimate. And that brings all 8 ideas together. From one floating shelf to an entire evening retreat. The real secret is not how much you add. It is how carefully you combine wood, stone, clay, rope, greenery, and light. Conclusion: wood, stone, clay, rope, and light. A beautiful Mediterranean garden does not begin with expensive furniture or a complete renovation. It begins with texture. Weathered wood beside warm terracotta. Rough natural stone against pale gravel. Thick rope supporting a simple shelf. Rosemary brushing against an old branch. And, after sunset, a few warm lanterns giving those same materials a completely different character. That is what connects all 8 ideas we explored today. If you have a narrow backyard, a 6 by 8 foot patio, a rented deck, or a small balcony, you do not need to transform everything at once. Start with one area. Maybe it is the blank wall behind your chair. Maybe it is the awkward corner beside the fence. Or perhaps it is simply the place where you drink coffee every morning. Choose one focal point and build slowly around it. A reclaimed shelf can lead to a vertical herb garden. A few stones can become an agave corner. One comfortable chair can become a reading nook. And a handful of warm lights can turn that same little garden into a peaceful evening retreat. This approach is also easier if you prefer simple tools, lighter projects, less bending, fewer permanent changes, and materials that are affordable or already available around the home. The goal is not perfection. It is creating a space that feels calm, useful, personal, and increasingly beautiful with age. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which of these 8 ideas would you try first? The driftwood wall sculpture, the crate garden, the stone ring agave bed, or the lantern retreat? Tell me in the comments below. And if you enjoy practical ideas for decorating small homes, patios, balconies, bedrooms, home offices, and gardens with natural and easy-to-find materials, subscribe to Dream Room and follow the channel for more inspiration. Your next favorite corner may already be waiting in your home.